Hi, and welcome back to the Last Man channel. Thanks for joining me for our second installment in the segment called Apocalypse Talk, where we play a game called The Long Drive, and we head out across the desert in our crappy Skoda 100, scavenging for parts and trying to keep the thing running, and at the same time, we have kind of a nice little discussion about what different utopian theorists would say we should do to rebuild society better now that it's fallen apart. So, this is part two of our discussion of Plato's Republic. Thanks for joining me. If you haven't seen the first part, go ahead and check that out on my channel. If you like this, hit like and consider subscribing because I got more of these coming out, right? So let's just jump right into it. Here we go. Now, as you recall, when we last left off from episode 1, we had parked next to this garage here, and it could have some good stuff for us. So before we get into the Plato talk, we're going to take a look at this garage, and we're just going to see maybe it has some tires, maybe a better radiator, maybe it's got some stuff we need. We could use some of that. All right. Abandoned garage in the wasteland. What could be better? I don't know about you, but I'm excited. And what do we have here? All right. So this is a Trabant. I don't see the engine in here, but see how the gas tank is under the hood? These were little two-stroke cars. You would have had to mix the oil in with the water, and they would have been air-cooled with no radiator, with I think just a two-cylinder engine. They were about a 20 horsepower motor. These were produced in East Germany, and this is one of the rarer station wagon ones. Now, one interesting thing about these is that the communist bloc, it wanted to figure out other materials it could use besides steel, which was kind of in short supply, kind of expensive. So they came up with something for these body panels, which I think was called Duraplast, I think. It's plastic and cotton combined and pressed into these panels, and they don't rust or corrode. Kind of like fiberglass. Um, anyway, kind of interesting, right? It means that every time a Trabant left the road, quit running, broke, and somebody parked it, it just sits there not rusting for like ever and ever. Oh, this garage is terrible. Look at this. We have a bus radiator, empty. We have a jerry can full of alcohol. Oh boy. A whole lot of nothing. A little bit of oil in that coolant tank. An empty 50-gallon drum. An air freshener on the ground. That is not a bumper for a Skoda, so I guess we won't even worry about it. Here. We have an air freshener. What do you think? That was disappointing. Am I right? Loud. Okay. I think I can attach these, right? Sorry. There it is. Huh? Sure. Oops. Okay. Back to what you really wanted, right? Back to talking about Plato. Enough of this scavenging gameplay stuff. Boring. Alright. So here's what I want to talk about today. And I do apologize for those of you who are kind of easily motion sick, maybe some of the herky-jerky motions of my screen are bothering you, so I'm going to put it into this mode for us. Alright, so what I think we need to know, how's that, about Plato, to start, is that this man loved allegories, metaphors. He loved explaining things with little examples, right? Things he thought would be accessible to the average person, you and me. And he's got 3 of them that I really think we ought to talk about. And then I'm going to give you a treat. I'm going to supply you with an allegory of my own. That's right, breaking Plato news, which does not happen very often. I have come up with a genius new way of using the long drive to explain what Plato would say we need to do to rebuild society. So stay tuned for that. But to start, let's talk about Plato's most famous metaphor, the allegory of the cave. This is kind of how he thought he could explain how most people live their lives and the difference between where we are and how we live and how he wishes we could live. So here goes. I'm going to do my best. Keep it short. According to Plato, most of us live these kind of unenlightened lives like we're in the dark. We don't understand what's really real. We don't understand what's really important. We're like people living down in a cave who've been there our whole lives. People who, in fact, are chained in that cave, and we can only look in one direction. Our necks are immobilized, our hands and feet are bound, and we can only look at this cave wall. And our entire reality is this cave wall. And so Plato would say that what happens, of course, if that's your reality, is that you think what matters are the shadows on the cave wall, because burning behind you, me, people, is a fire in this cave. There's a little bit of understanding, a little bit of enlightenment and logic, right, in our lives. It's like a fire burning behind us, and it casts shadows on the wall. Now, for whatever reason, this cave we're in it's busy, the thoroughfare, and people are carrying things back and forth between us and the fire all the time, and they're casting shadows on the cave wall. And you, me, everybody can be forgiven for thinking in life that the shadows on the wall are the important thing, that the shadows on the wall are reality. And we spend our whole lives trying to guess which shadow is next, how the shadows, are usually grouped, which ones come first, second, and third most of the time, and we think that understanding that stuff is the important thing, right? But, of course, Plato would say that's kind of sad, that we don't really understand anything at all. We've got to check this gas station out. We have to interrupt the allegory of the cave to check out this gas station. I know that's upsetting, but it's the long drive. We got to do it. Cigarettes, apparently? Oh my. What did we just see? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah, no, we're not gonna we're not gonna keep looking. Some water in a bucket. Pallet. Sorry about the camera motion again. Please. Gas. We got some gas. See, not a total waste. Here we go. Okay. We don't have a ton, do we? But hey, that's better than nothing. Okay, moving on. So, here, we'll look in this well. We'll look at the well. I'm not sure I remember how to look. I don't remember how to lean over the well. There's a way to do it, but anything down there we can't get anyway. If I fell in that well, I could not get back out. All right. Where were we? Oh yeah, the cave. So, in the allegory of the cave, Plato thinks that if some man or woman were able to free their head and actually look around, turn their head and see behind them, they'd see that everything they thought was real and important in life, all those shadows, were meaningless compared to the actual things that were casting the shadows behind it. That man or woman would see that that reality was so much more than the shadows on the wall, and that everyone had been living their lives, according to the wrong things. They didn't know what was true. Plato thinks that if that person were brave enough and strong enough, they might even be able to break the rest of their bonds, free their arms and legs and get out of the cave, climbing up like an air vent or something, and getting out to the real world. Of course, that would be scary and lonely and painful. And once they emerged out into the light of day, it would hurt their eyes, and it would be terrifying. The sun would probably seem just terrifying. But if they were strong enough and they were able to acclimate to the sun, after a while they could look around and see real trees, real horses, real versions of all the things they'd only ever seen shadows of before. And then they would understand what's real and what matters, right? For him, that person would be his philosopher king, the person who should rule society, the person who's strong enough to be enlightened about that stuff. And if that person were selfless enough to go back down into the cave and to try to help the people in the cave understand what's real a little better, to try and share some of what he or she learned, then that person definitely would be Plato's philosopher king. And if we were talking about Buddhism, I suppose it'd be a bodhisattva like the Buddha himself, right? Someone selfless who could move on but stays behind to help the rest of us who need help understanding. Okay. That's the allegory of the cave. And it kind of explains what, Plato's fundamental belief in the world of the forms, but we're not going to get into that. Allegory / myth number 2. Alright, so our philosopher king is trying to help people, clueless people like you and me, living down in a cave. We wouldn't understand what that person said to us. We wouldn't understand the truths that person understood. We wouldn't understand the things they had seen. So that philosopher king would need some way of making the truth more accessible to us. They'd need to tell us little fairy tales, little stories about the truth. And then maybe we'd be able to understand them, wrap our heads around them, right? So Plato had a couple of those he thought any good society would need to tell its citizens in order to kind of keep them in line. Because not everybody's going to become enlightened and climb out of the cave. Maybe we just need a little story to tell us what to do, right? Sorry, we got to deal with this. Hang on. A little better, I guess. Back in the car. So, where are we? Oh yeah. So a couple of these myths he thought would be helpful for people to help them understand. One of them is the myth of air. He thought, and this was, 400 years before the Christian church began, he thought that kind of like you learn in church, that people need to be told that doing the right thing eventually will pay off and doing the wrong thing eventually is something you'll regret. So he thought if society had a little myth about a man who did selfish, short-sighted things because they seemed like they would pay off and they seemed fine at the time, he goes on later and learns the error of his ways, regrets his selfishness, regrets not doing things for the good of society. We found another garage here. Was I driving with no lights just then? Ooh, that was dangerous. If society had this myth about a man who really regretted being selfish and taking shortcuts and doing the wrong thing, then people would, stay in line because they would worry that they could regret making the wrong decision later. Actually, you know what? We're gonna wait for the light. Can't sleep yet? For real? I feel like the game is just messing with me. What if I get out of the car? Okay. I want to explore this, Give me a sec, sorry. That's an outside light. That's an outside light. Okay, here we go. A door. A back seat. Another door. Some paint. A faucet. That's kind of handy. Bear with me. Might be something up here, right? An empty oil can. Like a nitrous tank or something. I think it would explode if I shot it, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. Well, that was not really worth it, was it? Anyway, where were we? All right, the myth of air. Basically, we need to have like a little Sunday school myth about how we'll like good things and regret bad things and all that. All right, moving on. Actually, now it lets us sleep. Here's where things get a little dicey, probably. For somebody like you and me, someone living in the modern world and having, kind of democratic sensibilities would probably not love that Plato thought that society really, really needed hierarchy, that it really needed stratification, that for it to be stable, you had to have different well-defined levels in society for it to run. And he thought that the way to explain to the citizens why everyone needs to kind of stay at their level, and I know this sounds a little bit like a caste system, but he had his reasons. The way to explain it, though, Plato thought, because the philosopher king would come up with its very enlightened philosophical reason for needing these hierarchies, and it came down to, balance and things like that, balancing the different elements of society in the right amounts. But the myth would go that when human beings were created, they were created with certain, metals imbued in them, right? And most people were created with like bronze or iron, a couple of very common but very useful metals. And for Plato, the bronze and the iron are the group of people who are laborers, artisans, entrepreneurs, people who, get industry going, get production ramped up, that make things happen, right? That kind of make an economy boom. The people who are making things and buying things and kind of living their day-to-day life like you and me. That's the iron and the bronze. Those human beings that were made with more silver, a semi-precious metal, in their makeup would be like the bureaucrats. They would be the civil servants. They'd be the military, the police, social services. Those people who selflessly devote themselves to society and serving society, to maintaining security and stability, those would be the silver. And for Plato, and of course this may sound a little, self-serving, but at the top, those people with gold, the precious metal in their makeup, those would be like his philosopher king, the people at the highest levels in a society, the people at the highest levels of administration, because of their merit, because they are enlightened, because they are wise, because they understand what's real and what's important. Those people are the gold. Okay, those would be the three tiers of what society needs for Plato. And so the myth of the metals would help explain to everyone why different people have different roles in Plato's Republic. Yeah, we're stopping, Okay. So we've covered the allegory of the cave. We've covered the myth of air a little bit, sort of. We've done a bad job of covering the myth of air. We've covered the myth of the metals. And so I think we're getting to the point where you're ready to hear the brand new Plato Allegory. 1978 is what this magazine says. We have to pick it up, don't we? I mean, we've kind of got to look at it. Wow. Okay. Is it 1978? We're going to check out this bus a little bit, huh? What do you think? Empty fuel tank. Gotta know the secrets. Buses are fun. Look, all the doors open. Whee! Should we check it out a little? I mean, I'm always curious, right? Empty coolant tank. Empty oil tank, empty gas tank. You know, if we had some diesel, some oil, and some water, we could drive this thing, but we don't. So, oh well. Okay. The new Plato allegory for my privileged viewers today is the allegory of the car. See, here's what I think. I think Plato would want society to function like a machine. He would want it to make sense, be well engineered. He would want every piece in its place, every cog, well meshed with the other cogs, and he would want society to have all the things it needs, just like this car, this machine needs all the certain things to function, right? Now, I think we would agree that the first thing a car needs to function is an engine. It's got to be able to generate power and get down the road. It needs the engine and the oil and the water and the gas that make it go. For Plato, that would be the bronze class, right? Those people who get the wheels of industry production and consumption going, that generate an economy for a society, and that basically live their lives. They have their fun, they chase their dreams, and it's a lot like you and me. Society needs those people generating production and demand and all that stuff. So that's the engine. But you and I know that an engine is not enough to really like round out a car. Being able to go is essential. But somebody, something has to kind of make this possible and safe. So the tires, the bumpers, the brakes, the shocks, the springs, the steering, all those things that keep the car from just rocketing into a building or something, those things for Plato would be like the silver. Society needs those. Society needs the driving force of industry and commerce, but it needs oversight. It needs the silver. It needs the bureaucrats. It needs the the military and the police that keep everybody safe, just like the bumpers and the shocks and things keep them safe. Just like the tires, help smooth the bumps out for the passengers of the car. The civil servants, those selfless silver class, they help protect you and me living in society. And then I think you can probably guess where I'm going with this last one, okay? And that is that this car with brakes, tires, engine, bumpers, all that stuff, steering, that's great. But until the driver gets in that car, right? Until somebody sits in that seat and steers it, knows where to point it, tells the engine and the brakes when to go, when to stop, helps steer society away from danger, that would be the gold class. That would be the leadership that we need. At the very top, we need a strong central leader, someone calling the shots, who's wise enough to know where this car needs to go. And that same person needs to be wise enough to know how much water, how much oil, how much gas should be in there, right? That same person needs to be smart enough to know how much, air in the tires and when to replace them and things like that. So this is just a video game, but I think it provides a useful analogy for us that to get across the desert in this game, we need a well-running machine and a wise driver at the wheel who knows what it needs, right? And that's how we keep everybody safe. That's how we journey down this road as smoothly as possible. And Plato would say that if we were going to rebuild society from this desert wasteland we see here, what we'll need is a strong, wise leadership like the philosopher king, and we will need a selfless and devoted class of civil servants like the silver, right, to kind of keep everybody safe. to help regulate and oversee the society and carry out the philosopher king's directions, just like the steering, the brakes carry out, and the gas pedal carry out the driver's directions in the car. And of course, that's what makes the engine you and me, you know, the working class, which I'm definitely a part of. That's what makes the engine a good thing. That's what makes the engine, you know, drive us in directions we should go in. And that's what keeps everyone safe and comfortable and stable along the way. So it doesn't sound very democratic because it's not. Plato didn't love democracy. He thought one driver at the helm. You get too many people trying to steer the car, push the gas, push the brakes, and agree on all that, and you're gonna wreck. For Plato, it has to be a strong central leadership, and then everyone has to kind of know their place. And I know this is a little iffy, but for us, but everybody, if you're bronze, be the best bronze you can be. If you're silver, be selfless. You know, devote your life to society, to the betterment of everyone else. Be willing to have babies with whoever society tells you to have babies with, and to immediately surrender those at birth. And this is where I just realized Plato starts to sound a little iffy. Yeah, he was a fan of eugenics. You know what? There are other utopian theories. They are also good, and we can check those out in the next segment of Apocalypse Talk, because I'm thinking maybe eugenics didn't age well. So, next time we jump back into this, not only will we explore this garage, which I'm hoping has some actually good stuff in it, but we will explore another theorist. And, we've got our... Oh, that's not good.